Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm here with Stacy Centeno. She is a bookkeeper based in LA, Los Angeles, California. She helps solo entrepreneurs and small business owners eliminate fear and confusion when it comes to managing their finances. She will help figure it out exactly how to run your business and also how to file a tax return, write-offs at the end of the year, or anything that has to do with accounting to make profitable decisions.
Hi, Jonathan. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
To be completely honest, for me, this was one of the biggest areas I struggled the most when I first started my wedding photography business career almost 11 years ago. And something I see time and time again when coaching students, they don't have a clear understanding or just clueless on how to start a photography business for the first time.
Absolutely. That's what I'm all about. I love helping small business owners and especially, people that are just starting their business because it is difficult to navigate. And so when you have somebody by your side that can kind of help you and guide you, and, if you have access also to a community, that helps a lot. So yeah, anything that I can do to help, let me know.
We actually connected recently, and since you are an expert in this field, I thought to myself, would be a great idea to pick your brain and ask a few questions so I can share them with the community. Honestly, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face, is really putting all those legal things in place in our business. Let's dive right in. The first question that I have for you is, what are the differences between a bookkeeper and a CPA, and what does each of them do?
So my best analogy that I like to use with this is that a CPA is like a doctor and a bookkeeper is like a nurse. And so the doctor kind of just looks over a broader sense of your actual situation. A CPA is a state board licensed accountant. And so they have to go through rigorous exams and experience. And so what they mostly focus on is like issuing audit reports, filing audit reports, usually with like the Securities and Exchange Commission. They also can file your tax returns. Not all of them do. Everybody picks and chooses sort of their specialty in their practice area, just like a doctor would. Not everybody is a heart surgeon. And so not everybody's going to want to file your tax returns. So that's why you see sometimes PAs as, auditors or as tax accountants or just regular accountants designated as CPAs. And then the bookkeeper is more like your nurse who's there with you and is involved more in the day-to-day transactions of your business. So they're going to track your cash, any sales, any purchases that you made, and they'll categorize all of those things so that at the end of the month, you get these financial statements. And that's where the income statement comes in, which is also like the profit and loss, the balance sheet, cash flow statements, and all these things that later on your CPA will be asking you at the end of the year for. They also like reconcile your bank statements and your bank accounts and your credit cards and things like that. So it's more of the day-to-day operation as opposed to a CPA is generally involved once a year. I like to recommend you pick a CPA that is involved throughout the year so that they know what's going on in your financial situation, and come the end of the year, you're one of their favorite customers, they get your tax return done, and you'll be on your way.
Let's move on to the second question. Let's say you're starting a photography business for the first time. What is the first thing you need to do?
I would say the first thing that you need to do is choose your business structure. So decide whether you're going to go into business as a sole proprietor, a partnership, so you with somebody else. If you're going to set up an LLC, which is a limited liability company, whether you're going to set up a corporation. And so choosing your business structure, I think, is the first step. And once you do that, then you can start looking into the different state and local authorities so that you can register your business name and also get your EIN. The EIN is your federal employment ID number, And that's the number that you want to apply for with the IRS, not the state or local authorities, but with the IRS. And the EIN number acts like your personal social security, but for your business. So when you're filing for bank loans or opening up your business bank account or for anything that requires a social security number, you give an EIN instead so that you're not putting down your social security number or any sort of personal information, so that you can start to keep your personal and your business matters separate, which is one of the main goals and things that you should be doing. So register with your local authorities, get an EIN. Sometimes your local authorities will also require you to get a DBA, which that is doing business as, and that could be like a fictitious name or an assumed name. So like my business name is Cierto Bookkeeping, but I could also have a DBA that's like Stacy's Accounting if I really wanted to, and it would still be considered Cierto Bookkeeping. It just gives you a different identity sort of within your same company title. I would also, once you figure out your business name, register, do all of that, I would register a domain name, like get your own website address. Google is great for that. There's like GoDaddy and places like that where you can get your own website domain. Yeah, those would be like the first things that I would suggest before opening up a business bank account.
What is the benefit of registering as an LLC versus a sole proprietor?
So an LLC is a limited liability company, and it's just, what it says. It limits your personal liability in case of a lawsuit or anything by keeping your business and your personal assets separate. There's two different kinds. There's a single member LLC, which is just one person, and an LLC partnership, which could be two or more people registered as an LLC. I would say that there are two big benefits from registering as an LLC. One is that it keeps your business and personal assets separate, just in case there's any sort of lawsuits or any sort of conflict. And also, it can help you once you're at a higher profitable rate. An LLC requires you as the owner to get paid as an employee, and so then you become subject to self-employment taxes, which are the medical and social security taxes. But all of the profit and losses from the LLC flow through your personal income tax. There is no real separate tax return, and that is actually a good thing, because then you're not paying taxes from the business and your income tax personally. There's benefits there, and I wouldn't suggest paying yourself as an employee until you start hitting about maybe $50,000 profit, and that's when you should start talking to like a CPA about, what would be a good salary for me to have and things like that. But you can definitely still register as an LLC, have that protection in your back pocket. My only caveat, and why I don't suggest starting as a sole proprietor, is that once you start as a sole proprietor, you get your EIN, you open up your bank account. Let's say down the line, you start profiting and you're like, you know what, I should file for an LLC. And so you go in to file for an LLC and register as an LLC. Now you have to get a whole new EIN number as an LLC. So you'd have to go back and reopen a different bank account and do all the paperwork that you did as a sole proprietor and move it into this LLC type of business. And so that's why I just say just start as an LLC, because then you won't have to backtrack and do the double extra work.
What is an LLC, and what are the benefits of forming that business entity?
So an LLC is a limited liability company, and what that means is exactly that. It limits your personal liability from your business and your personal assets. So like if somebody were to file a lawsuit against you, somebody were to try to defame you or something, there is that separation of liability that you have when you register as an LLC as opposed to a sole proprietorship. As a sole proprietorship, you are putting all of your personal assets on the line. So if you get sued, they can go after your personal assets. They can go after your car. They can go after your bank accounts. They can go after your properties. And with an LLC, they'll have a harder time doing that, and they probably will not be able to access any of your personal assets, and they'll just be able to access your business assets. So that would be like the biggest upfront benefit from it.
Is it necessary to separate your personal and business accounts?
Always, yes. Oh, you always want to separate business from personal. So it also doesn't have to be a business account. I mean, if you really, really don't want to open a business account, you could just open a separate like credit card and just run everything separate from one another. Would be a good alternative too. You also could open a business credit card. And what I've seen is that interest rates are lower for even for new businesses. They're lower for new businesses, and they give you a higher credit limit, which could be a good thing if you have a lot of startup costs. And sometimes they have like these promo interest rates where like you don't have to pay like zero interest for like 24 months or whatever, which really helps when you're an entrepreneur and you're really starting off and you want, you have all this equipment to buy, you have insurance to pay for, you have endless amount of things that you weren't thinking about spending money on. And so that's also a way to go about it. But yeah, I definitely always separate business from personal. And that also helps you at the end of the year to like be able to keep things separate, be able to see how much you spent in an actual business, how much you received, but also really gives you a clear idea of the possible tax deductions that you can claim at the end of the year. That way you start to see the patterns and you start to become more aware of things and what can be deductible and reduce your tax liability at the end of the year. Another thing that I would also separate / track is any mileage and parking that you might be doing, especially as photographers. You're running around, you're going places, you're spending gas, you're, whether it be on public transit or not, like you're still spending money, and that's a business expense. And these are things you should be tracking. And so keep it separate. So yes, always, yes, please separate your personal and your business. As long as you keep it separate from your actual personal income, it should be okay. And that's why I hesitate with saying, you can also do a business credit card, because then you don't have a way to receive money, right? But then there's also credit card payment processors like Stripe, Square, Authorized Net. All of those things are all great because they all can automatically link into your bank account, preferably your business bank account. But if you don't want a business bank account, then get yourself a separate personal account that you don't touch, that only your income comes into that, and only your expenses come out of that for your business, and that's it. I would say avoid receiving money from Venmo and paying money from Venmo, because there's no description in there. Somebody will just send you money, and all you have is maybe a name, maybe an emoji. Like, how are you going to explain that to the IRS, How are you going to explain that to yourself later? And unless you have like your own spreadsheet, which I encourage people to do, but you have to be really meticulous about it, and you have to really stay on top of it. And I mean, as a new business owner, you're not really concerned about that. You're more concerned about getting clients and getting exposure, and trying to do things right is not at the forefront of your vision right now. And so that's why I said just steer away from it. Like PayPal Business is better if you want to do something like that. Zelle Business is good too. So I mean, there are alternatives out there. And I would, if somebody is like really adamant about, oh no, I only take money in Venmo and that's it, then there's Zelle. Zelle works the exact same way. You can explain to them the benefits of it also and how it affects your business.
Where should you get your business license? And if you are a destination wedding photographer, does one license cover every destination you might visit for work? If not, how do you figure it out? What other licenses you might need? Does it vary from state to state or country to country?
Yeah, everything varies from state to state, country to country, city to city, county to county, I know that in the city of LA, it's not the same thing as like the city of San Bernardino, which isn't even all that far away, just in photography or in sales or in any sort of business. So every municipality, every every county, every state has different requirements. And so I would say going through the sba.gov gives you a good overview, and then digging into every state that you're going to be in, whatever city you're going to be in, they'll generally have all the requirements that you need in order to get that permit, in order to get that license or anything, because everything varies between all the governments. You want to register your business with the state, and you want to check with local authorities. The best resource that I can give, especially for small businesses, is sba.gov, which is the Small Business Administration of the U.S. If you're a business outside of the U.S., you'd have to look that up within your country. But they are chock full of different resources that you can use. I know that in California, at least, there's calgov.net where you can go, and they list out the different scenarios for each profession and whether you would need a permit with them or to file with them or register or anything with them. So it would be your state, your local authorities, and definitely register with the IRS so that you can get that EIN number and not ever have to use your personal social security number. And as opposed to just one license covering every destination, I don't think that would ever fly. I know I did some research that even in DC, you have to get a permit if you want to shoot at any of the national parks or anything. So every state is going to have a different requirement for even different pieces of land. I know that some places here in Hollywood, you have to get a specific photography a permit for, a different license also for them. So it just depends exactly of where your couples are thinking of having the photography shoot, where you want to take the shoot, where you might end up or you might not end up. But definitely check out any and all the possible scenarios of where you might be in the different locations, because every location is going to have a different requirement.
What is a retail license, and to whom does it apply?
So a retail license is somebody who is reselling something. Generally, it's a person who purchases something or creates something and then goes out and sells to the public, whether it be an actual product or it could be a non-tangible product as well, like an electronic thing. And it applies to anybody who's in business and anybody who's selling anything. I know that on the East Coast, you guys call it retail license. On the West Coast, we call it resale license. And it's the same thing. I know that for a lot of the states, not all of them, if you sell, as a photographer, if you sell tangible products, like an actual print of any sort of photograph, any sort of album, anything like that, that is subject to retail or resale tax. And you're going to have to submit a tax return for that, usually every quarter, if there's enough business of you doing that retail or resale. But that generally happens after your first year, because everything is based on the prior year sales generally. And once you move into the second year, they'll start basing it on your prior quarter. It applies to anybody like that. My suggestion with that is to kind of get around all of that, is to deliver your products electronically. Because if you deliver your products electronically via a link, like in Dropbox or in Google Photos or whatever it is that you want to use, that is not a tangible product because you can't touch that link. You can't physically hold that link. But the person still has access to all the products that you created for them. And so that transaction in itself is not subject to tax. The instant that you are able to hold something, that's when it becomes a tangible product, and that's when it becomes an actual taxable event.
What types of liabilities should photographers be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to be subject to so many different liabilities, and people are always out there just not wanting to be nice to other people. And so you definitely want to get a professional liability insurance and general liability insurance. You want to make sure that the general liability insurance protects you against any defamation, any property damage, and especially any bodily injuries that might happen, whether they occur to you or you somehow cause them upon somebody else. You want to make sure that you always have some sort of coverage, and that generally falls into the general liability insurance part of it. So those are the two insurance pieces that I would get: professional liability and general liability. And then if you are self-employed, obviously medical coverage for any reason, any incidents that might happen that would not be covered under general liability insurance is what I would suggest. Some places also require public liability insurance, but you have to check with the venue because sometimes they have their own. Sometimes you have to go through their insurance carrier. Sometimes yours isn't enough, or your coverage isn't enough, or whatever it is. Always be aware of where you are going to shoot, where you're going to be at all times, and what they require. Professional liability insurance, so any claims against your professional and personal services, includes like a dissatisfied customer, or like losing all your product, or you're having a faulty memory card. And general liability insurance is just protecting yourself and anybody else that's trying to make a claim against you, any sort of damage to your properties, defamation, things like that. I had one client actually who, like, he was between insurance carriers and did a photo shoot, and his memory card like just died or crapped out, and he lost all of his photographs. And so the client came back and they filed a lawsuit against him because they were expecting these beautiful photographs and he could just not produce the product because of a faulty memory card. But he was able to pay for all the claims and all the expenses because he had the professional liability one. So they're both equally important. Don't skip on either one of them, professional and general.
Our last final question: what other details should a wedding photographer worry about in the first year of their business?
I would say keeping things separate, personal from business. As always, keep things separate. Keep track of any receipts of $75 or more, unless they're like Targets or Amazon, things like that, that can be questionable. Parking, keep track of your miles and any sort of like miscellaneous expenses that you might have, whether it be pens or shoes or something like that that you need, that are required for you to have a safe shoot. Things like that I would definitely track. I would not wait until the end of the year to know how your business is doing. Try to keep track of it, on a monthly basis. You need to know whether you are making profit or not, whether certain type of photo shoot is working better for you. Maybe you're doing wedding photography, but maternity photography is going off the charts for you, and you're spending a lot less time on it because you're so consumed with wedding photography, but you're profiting so much more from maternity. So maybe you should be shifting gears, but you're not going to know that if you can't track all your income and all your expenses separately. Keep them, your business and your personal, separate. And I would also suggest, within that same token, being prepared for any sort of fluctuations or seasonalities, because I know that photography is a very seasonal business. And so trying to expand your niche and what it is that you do and whether there's a cost benefit to it is something that you can also analyze and learn from. Keeping track of your business and personal things separately. And that'll help with your cash flow at the end of the year and throughout the year, instead of just wondering, where did all my money go? Am I being profitable? Is this even worth it? Like, what's going on? You should be concentrating on building your business, not on like keeping track of when's my next tax deadline? When should I be submitting this? And so, yeah, working with somebody definitely has its benefits, and you have to weigh your costs and benefits from it. But I think at the end of the day, peace of mind that your stuff is getting taken care of really pays itself off. So yeah, any questions that your community might have after this, just shoot them over. I can either answer them on Instagram, tag them on it, or we can do this again. If there are any more like specific questions, we can also, collaborate again and address any of them further, give people more of in-depth answers.
Now, all of these laws can be very different state to state, country to country. So make sure that you find someone that is going to be able to help you out and get everything as simple as possible. That's probably the most important thing. So don't let this scare you too much. If you want to do this on your own, feel free to jump into it. But I think through this conversation, it is quite clear why you should hire a professional. It has made my life so much easier in dealing with all the financial stuff on the back end of running a successful wedding photography business. So give Stacy a call. I have all her information down below. So Stacy, thank you so much for your time, for having this conversation. I know this isn't the most exciting thing to always talk about, but it is so awesome to have somebody who knows exactly what is going on and make our lives a lot easier. I definitely found this information extremely useful and incredibly valuable. Thank you again.
No, thank you for having me. One of my favorite subjects to talk about. I know that I'm weird like that, but that's why I'm the bookkeeper, right?
Bye for now.